Hey guys, how you going? Hope you're all doing very well. This afternoon I'm going to be doing yet another movie review for you all. This movie is a horror film from Australia, English language, released in the year 2022, directed by Sean Layev, and this film is called Carnifex. So Carnifex is about three scientists. They're venturing into the devastated bushland of Australia that was affected by the bushfires a few years previous, and they're there to document endangered species that are still living in the habitat that is actually being spared. And so if they can document that endangered species still live here, they can save it from being destroyed, basically made way for apartments and all that kind of thing. And so they're desperate to find footage of these endangered species, but when they venture into the bushland, they set up camp, they find something that is far more terrifying than they could ever have imagined, which threatens their very existence. And so what happens at that point on is something you're going to have to find out for yourself, because that's as far as I'm going with my synopsis. Now my thoughts on Carnifex. Unfortunately, this movie falls victim to the incompetence of the Australian way as far as films are concerned. This is a movie that wasn't backed with a lot of confidence, and unfortunately it went under the radar, which is the case with many other Australian movies. And this is why not a lot of Australian movies make it to the cinema, but the most surprising aspect of Carnifex was the fact that it was out in cinemas. And unfortunately, as is the case with many Australians, I didn't actually know this movie existed before it actually came out. So when I saw Carnifex, I thought that looked interesting. What is this movie all about? It's Australian. I thought, alright, well, where did this come from? And so coming into this movie, I wanted to see it in cinemas, but unfortunately I was ill, so I had to wait for the DVD release. So I was very excited. It's not every day that you see an Australian horror film that's made it to the cinemas, and so I had a lot of curiosity, and I had a lot of expectation based on the fact that Carnifex, this is a creature feature horror film, and I liked the trailer. I thought it looked really good. And so what was this movie going to produce? What it produced was a thoroughly entertaining experience. It's actually a movie that can gravitate to a lot of Australians. It's a movie how we treat nature, and how nature is actually vanishing before our very eyes. And if we don't do something quick, these endangered species are going to be wiped from the face of the earth. And this is something that's been done before, and you're probably thinking that this is a movie that's going to be preaching that message, as is the case with a lot of other movies that are environmental, but this movie doesn't really do that so much. This movie gives you that insight, and this is where it makes it a little bit more of a mature film. It's not just a simple what you see on the screen. It's something that's also going to make you think, and so I thought that was a welcome addition. It actually really worked in this movie. What I liked most about Carnifex was the Australiana in it. Now, for those of you who are outside of Australia, maybe you're not going to gravitate to this experience as much, but for me, living in a capital city that's amongst the bushland and amongst the wilderness, this is something that I could really relate to. Whether it was the magpie swooping one of these characters, this is something that I've had to deal with for 3 months of every year for my whole life. Magpies that are very aggressive during nesting season. And so when I saw that little aspect, I thought, oh, that's something I could relate to, and that's something that I've experienced. And so there's a strong sense of realism that is built in this world that I could really access. And so you have the sounds of the possums in the trees, you have koalas, wombats, kangaroos, everything that you think from Australia. But for us Australians, there's something that we could gravitate to more so than we could if we saw a movie about the American wilderness. It's something that I haven't actually lived, but when you actually live something that you're seeing on screen, this is something that makes it a lot more personal. And so this is a very personal horror film for me, because the things that they're going through, I've actually experienced that, and so it's something that I really, really like. And it's the beauty of Australian nature, but also how that beauty can turn into sheer terror once the horror elements set in. And so you don't want to treat the bushland with disrespect, because you can become very lost very, very quickly, and you're at the mercy of nature, and it shows you how things can go from bad to worse very, very quickly. And so I really like the atmosphere that this movie creates, and I really like the characters. The movie is a very simplistic way at detailing these characters, but it shows you that it's not rocket science to actually make characters that you can gravitate to. You just don't make them annoying and have relatable qualities to them, so when the horrible things start to happen, you have that grave fear for their safety, because it felt like these are people that you've known, that these are people that you can be friends with, because it has that human relatability. And so these characters were very simplistic, and the way that they talk to each other, it wasn't giving you sob stories, it wasn't throwing you twists and turns within human relationships. It knows what kind of film it wants to be, but it's giving you characters that you can go on the ride with, and that you don't want to see horrible things happen to them. And when things start to happen to them, I thought the suspenseful levels were elevated, because of the simple fact the movie has a very good build-up. Now, a lot of people say it's a very slow film. But I actually really like the build-up. It's a strong, realistic build-up. They're going through the bushland. You see the beauty of the bushland, but you always feel as though something is wrong. That is through the soundtrack and the visuals. I always felt as though something was following them. It was an invisible presence that was following them. So although nothing particularly scary was happening on screen, I always felt as though there was a strong build-up. It was slowly evolving into something that I couldn't put my finger on, but I just felt very, very uncomfortable. And so the further they go into the bushland, the more close they will get into this danger. When you find out what the danger is, I really, really liked it. I'm not going to give too much away, but it was something that, again, is very Australiana. And so the whole film has that confidence of selling Australia, but unfortunately, it just wasn't backed by people who had confidence. But the actual film itself, I thought it was a love letter to the Australian way of life. What it wants to be ultimately is a fun horror film, and it really nailed it. When the horror aspects kick into gear, I thought the suspense was fantastic. The CGI creature was very smart. Now, a lot of people say that you can't see the creature enough, and if you're one of these people that needs to see the creature from start to finish, you're not going to like Carnifex. But the movie relies on the atmosphere and the suspense of what is actually coming, the anticipation of being attacked. And because it's in the bushland, it's such a vast area, you don't know where this attack is coming from. And so I thought that was really well done. And when you actually see the creature, you don't see it as clearly as you would in the daytime, because this is a nocturnal creature. And by being at night, it really disguises the shortcomings of the CGI. So you don't see it clearly, but you see it enough to actually realise it's actually a pretty cool design. I really liked the ending, and there were aspects of the movie that were generic, but they were used in a way, as I said, that was very fun, very Australian. And for Australian locals, I just think as though it was a pity that this movie didn't get more recognition to start with, because a lot more people would have gone to the cinema to see it. It's a lot of fun. If you like creature feature horror films and you want to see a movie that relies on atmosphere as opposed to what you actually see, then this is a movie for you. I'm going to give Carnifex 3.5 stars. Alright guys, that's it for my review. Hope you enjoyed it. Till next time, keep watching movies, and I'll see you later.